This will kill you if ignored. If you don't do something about it, anxiety has the potential to destroy your life.
Welcome to the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. The show that not only dives deep into real-world issues, but also brings it closer to home, helping you master the internal world of your mind and the external world of your home and environment. This is a show you can't afford to miss. So, welcome one, welcome all to Mind, Body, and Soul with your host, Scottish artist, author, and mental health mentor, John Morris.
Well, howdy there, folks. It is Thursday. It's 4:30 here in the UK, and we are live for the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. And hopefully, yes, we are now using the brand new equipment, the brand new cameras, brand new lighting. We've got brand new everything that's going on. This is really, really exciting. So I hope you like this. We've tried to minimize any lag, any issues, anything at all to the minimum. Hopefully it is working out well and you can all hear me clear and sharp and everything. If you want to comment in the sections box and everything, tripping over my own tongue, then please do feel free to do so. Want to hear from you, want you to be part of the show, because today we are talking about anxiety. Now, it's really interesting, isn't it, how anxiety has become so trendy. And because of that, everybody feels that they have to have an anxiety disorder. It's almost uncool if you don't have a disorder in one form or another. And what you find is, because it's trendy, that people want to have it. And ultimately, being normal is, well, it's weird. It's really weird. But here's the thing. Anxiety is not normal. It has become normalized so as people's feelings don't get hurt, people's feelings don't get upset. And I commend that, but I don't commend normalizing something that isn't normal. If somebody had, trigger warning, folks, if somebody had terminal cancer or somebody had a drug alcohol addiction problem, you wouldn't say to them, oh, well, that's normal. Because what happens is, when somebody normalizes something, is they feel like they don't need to actually do anything about it. They feel like they don't actually need to bother getting it fixed. And if you normalize something, it becomes acceptable. But you don't arrive on this planet with things being normalized. You don't arrive on this planet completely being anxious and all that. Maybe you can be born with a tiny, small strand of anxiety inside you, the anxiety strand, but the actual probability of that happening is very, very small. We develop anxiety. And the really cool thing about it is, if you develop anxiety yourself, it means you can also undevelop anxiety yourself. And in today's show, we are going to be talking all about that. But specifically, we're going to take the name of Mind, Body, and Soul literally, because we are going to be talking about how it affects the mind, how it affects the body, how it affects the soul. And I hope that all this is working and all this is right and good with the world. So let's start out right before we get anywhere. How does anxiety form? Well, like we've already said, it's something that's birthed within us. And what tends to happen when you're having an anxiety episode or an anxiety attack is your brain is latching on to so many details all at once that literally you're struggling to focus, you're struggling to absorb the environment. Now, you can be a little bit anxious and a little bit nervous before doing something like a podcast or doing a big meeting. That's one thing. But if you're in a perpetual state of constant anxiety, you have something wrong with you. Something has gone wrong. Now, what we do usually in practice and when I'm working with clients is to sit down and say, right, let's see where the root of this is. Let's see where this began. Let's see where this actually started and originated from. And what you will tend to find is it's usually a situation that has arisen. Maybe it's a party, maybe it's out and about, maybe it's a social environment. We're going to hear from Jordan Peterson, a recording later on. Maybe it is something inside you that you believe that you're anxious, because this is often the thing. It's not from other people that they feel these things. It's often that they believe them themselves. And as a result of believing themselves, they end up building this anxiety into something more catastrophic than what it actually is. So after that, what happens is anytime you have a situation that arises that looks anywhere similar to the situation that gave you your first anxiety attack, your brain locks on and it says, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Panics, freezes, all of that kind of stuff. And that's how you repeat anxiety over and over again. Now, you saw in the trailer where this really handsome fella, whoever he may be, actually said that anxiety can kill you if you do not deal with it. Yes, it can. Now, while anxiety isn't directly responsible for forcing things like bipolar syndrome, schizophrenia, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it is directly linked. It is one of the roots that exist with every single case of schizophrenia, bipolar, etc., that I have seen and that I have researched, and many others have as well. So with that in mind, where does it form? How does it form? We've looked at, but ultimately, what's going on in your brain? So we're going to get to a little video in a moment. I want to say if you're watching this on Facebook Live, you're missing so much on YouTube right now. You might want to click the link, go check it out, because you're going to miss some really, really cool content and awesome videos. If you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube, we encourage you all to comment and to tell, all the really awesome stuff that you've got going on, but more specifically, how we can help. And so it begins in a little place called the amygdala. Now, the amygdala, you've got two of them, and they sit just above your ears. But rather than me sitting here telling you all about them, how about I show you? Check this out.
What I wish I knew at 18 about my brain, the amygdala might surprise you. The amygdala is a small, almond-shaped cluster of nuclei located deep within the brain's temporal lobes. Think of it as the brain's emotional command center. It's responsible for processing emotions like fear, anxiety, and pleasure. When you encounter something scary, the amygdala kicks into high gear, triggering your fight or flight response. But it's not all about fear. The amygdala also helps you remember emotionally charged events, which is why you might vividly recall your first kiss or a terrifying roller coaster ride. It's like the brain's emotional scrapbook. Interestingly, the amygdala communicates with other brain parts, like the prefrontal cortex, to help you make decisions based on emotional memories. So next time you feel a rush of emotion, thank your amygdala for keeping things interesting. Stay curious and keep exploring the wonders of your brain.
So your brain does keep things really, really interesting. That's the best way of describing it. It keeps things very, very interesting, folks. What it also does is have the ability to lock onto emotion, to lock onto memory, and it remembers specific things. That's why, suddenly you feel like you want that bit of chocolate, or you want that, favorite TV show or whatever else. I'm trying to keep it PG, but you want that thing that makes you feel happy, that releases that dopamine hit inside of you. And what happens then is your brain will lock onto things and say, well, you were happiest when you had this. So I know, let's create this again. Let's create this emotion. But what happens when the amygdala maybe goes haywire? What happens when things get out of control? What happens when anxiety takes over?
This is going to blow your mind. Did you know anxiety hijacks your brain? At the core of anxiety's grip is the amygdala, the brain's fear processor. When anxiety kicks in, the amygdala goes into overdrive. This hyperactivity can override the prefrontal cortex, the brain's logic center. Essentially, anxiety stops your rational mind from calming down your emotions. It's a battle inside your brain, where fear often wins. Understanding this can be the first step to taking back control.
Okay, so you heard right there that when your brain essentially gets out of control, your brain essentially is to do a couple of things. One of them is to protect you. One of them is to essentially help you thrive. And the other one is to look for ways to escape dangerous situations. Now, If you've been in an extremely dangerous situation before, if you've been in an extreme situation before, you will know you feel that little bit of anxiety, you feel that little bit of unsettlement, or you might have a full-blown panic attack, okay? And what happens in that moment is it's your brain saying, I can't cope, I can't cope, I can't cope, I can't cope. And you become perpetually terrified because you feel that people are looking at you. You feel that you are standing out. If you're having anxiety about a situation, it's often related to the fact that you don't believe in yourself, that you can actually do what it is, which is often a lack of confidence. Now, what that comes down to is simply asking you questions. Do you have the ability to deliver through what it is that you say that you're going to do? More and more teenagers around the world are struggling with anxiety than ever before. Why? Because this comparison syndrome nonsense that is out there is literally fueling it left, right, and center to the point that teenagers cannot cope and cannot be themselves. Where has this been fueled? Well, guess what? You might be surprised or unsurprised to know that social media has been one of the biggest contributing causes to this comparison syndrome stuff that's going on all over teenagers' lives. There was a conversation that was had recently with ChatGPT, and it wasn't me, but I did happen to see it. And basically the conversation went something like this. If you were the devil, how would you distract people? How would you disturb them? How would you torment them the most? And ChatGPT came back and said, well, if I was the devil, what I would do is this. I would literally create a world full of distraction. And that's social media, that's pornography, that's TV, that's conversations that really don't matter, conversations that have no benefit, no fruit to them. If I was the devil, I would also look at doing things to people that force them to have comparison syndrome. Now, what's comparison syndrome? It means that you've got what I want, or I don't feel good enough about myself because I'm possibly not where you are, and I want what you want. Which is also a really, really dangerous thing. And this is what's happening with teenagers all the time. You hear them talk and they will say things like, don't feel pretty enough. They don't feel strong enough. They don't measure up. They don't have the body that they want. They don't have the look that they want. They don't have the expression that they want. They don't feel that they are able to contribute to society in the way that they want. They don't feel as if they really matter, that they're really valued. And where does that come from? Because all these beliefs are learnt. All these beliefs are learnt. And with anxiety, if you're having full-blown anxiety attacks and it's affecting the mind to the point that you're having PTSD, that you can't go to school, that you're having, bouts of or it's triggering bipolar syndrome, that it's triggering schizophrenia, that it's triggering to you to a point that you don't want to be in these social settings anymore, you then have to ask the question, where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? It is really vital to know where it's coming from. Because once you know where all of it's coming from, you can actually start to do something about it. So it begins in the amygdala. It goes through the anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, and then into the hippocampus. And the ACC amplifies the signals of fear and threat. Well, the hippocampus, responsible for memory, triggers anxiety based on past experiences. So literally, it is fighting against itself. And this is why Buddhist teaching frequently tells there is nothing more dangerous than a thought that is uncontrolled or an uncontrolled thought. For example, memories such as traumatic events can cause the hippocampus to send fear signals, exacerbating anxiety. So, for example, if you are, let's say, going to speak to your son or daughter, let's go with the family environment. If you're going to speak to your son or daughter, and it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, it's going to be something that's really difficult. You may have a memory of speaking to your son or daughter before where they flew off the handle, that they were really angry, they were really annoyed at how you responded. How could you say that to me, Mum? How could you say that to me, Dad? Da, 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 da. And before you go and speak to your child, that's what they do. That's what's coming up. And you're like, oh my goodness, oh, I can't do this, I can't deal with this. So you don't deal with things. You end up putting your head in the sand, like an ostrich, and you allow things to happen. Now, the danger when you put your head in the sand and allow things to happen is you have zero control over what happens to you, what the response is. You must, when it comes to anxiety, understand and know in yourself and ask one really critical question. Is what I am fearing right now a logical or an illogical response to anxiety. For example, logical response is, let's say you go out into a shopping center and it's really, really busy. So you feel a little bit like, oh my goodness, this is terrifying. If you are going to the shopping center and it's really busy, it's terrifying, yeah, that could be a logical response because, again, it's really, really busy. An illogical response to anxiety is stepping outside and believing the whole world is just going to fall apart. It's unlikely to happen. It's also as unlikely that you're going to get beamed up by aliens. It's also as unlikely that, someone is going to come rushing to your front door and is going to shout and bawl at you. Very unlikely. The logical things about anxiety is maybe you'll bump into somebody on the street that you don't want to see. Maybe your child will be really grumpy with you and really frustrated with you for no reason, apparently. Maybe the shopping center will be really, really busy. So then you start to look at ways of trying to deal with these things and trying to build them. But ultimately, if you don't deal with things in the mind, it's going to spread to where we're going to look at next after commercial break, which is the body. We'll be back in a moment. Check this out. Have you ever wanted to celebrate your fur baby in the best way possible? Something that you can treasure, something that captures the heart and soul of your furry friend. Well, look no further. With paintourpet.com, you have the opportunity to commission an amazing painting from internationally renowned artist John Morris. John has worked with literally hundreds and hundreds of clients from around the world. John's paintings not only have the ability to capture the heart and soul of each and every subject that he paints, but also has the power to evoke an emotional response from all who see his work. Now, if this sounds like the very thing you've been searching for to celebrate your fur baby in the most amazing way possible, then don't delay. Head on over to paintourpet.com today for a free, no obligation quote and to order your very, very own custom-made, hand-painted masterpiece. That's paintourpet.com. We look forward to hearing from you today.
I took a break from social media once, and that also was met with a negative reaction of like, oh, you can't hack it, like you can't handle social media. I just think that sometimes it's important to look up and engage with what's around you. And I find for me with social media, I can easily sit on the couch for 4 hours and scroll, but 99% of the time I don't have it on my phone. And my life is so much better for not being completely glued to this false world that we have on our phones. Yeah. But it's a shame, and I really hope it changes, because I think self-preservation is so important, and only a fool would say to you, you should work until you crack. Because if you crack...
Anxiety. It's more than just a feeling. It's a powerful force that can take a serious toll on your body. Today, I'm diving into the hidden physical effects of anxiety. When anxiety strikes, your body triggers its fight or flight response. Adrenaline and cortisol flood your system, prepping you for immediate action. But what happens when this response is always on? Your heart races, your blood pressure spikes. Over time, this can strain your heart, potentially leading to long-term issues. Your breathing speeds up too, sometimes to the point of hyperventilation, leaving you dizzy and gasping for air. Then there's your stomach. Anxiety can wreak havoc on your digestive system, leading to nausea, stomach cramps, even diarrhea. Your muscles tense up, and chronic anxiety can mean constant tightness and pain, often resulting in headaches. And let's not forget sleep. Anxiety can rob you of a good night's rest, causing insomnia or restless sleep, which only makes everything worse. But it doesn't stop there. Prolonged anxiety can weaken your immune system, making you more susceptible to illnesses and infections. These physical symptoms are closely tied to your mental and emotional state, leading to irritability, difficulty concentrating, and a paralyzing sense of fear. If left unchecked, the long-term consequences can be severe. Chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes, and mental health disorders such as depression. So what can you do? Mindfulness, therapy, exercise, and medication can all help manage anxiety. It's crucial to address anxiety and seek help. Your mental and physical health depend on it.
Okay, folks, so we're now talking about the effects of anxiety on the body. Now, as we mentioned earlier on, your body is one of the most phenomenal machines, most phenomenal computers in existence. Okay, if you imagine it as a computer, your brain being the central hub, the motherboard, is responsible for doing so many different tasks. If you don't deal with things, remember we talked about the ostrich sticking its head in the ground because, again, doesn't want to deal with anxiety, doesn't want to have to face it, doesn't want to have to acknowledge what's going on because everything's been normalized. then what happens is it spreads to the body. And anxiety is just one of the ones that we're going to be talking about in this series, because what happens is anxiety floods your body with acid, okay? And anxiety, they did an experiment in the United States, and I forget which university it was, but they experimented with water under different conditions. So literally what I have here in this mug, and they did it under different conditions. And you might have anxiety that's, played, nice, smooth jazz, and it's all good and happy and la, 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 la. They also had anxiety being screamed at. Also, they had water being screamed at. They also had water being subject to fear, to fear, to horror, to joy, to stimulus, all that kind of stuff. And what they did was to photograph the ways that the cellular structure of water, the atomic structure of water changed. And you can go online, you can see all this. It's absolutely fascinating. And water literally would, exhibit happy sort of patterns. I know it sounds really crazy, but it happened. It would exhibit happy sort of things with the happy music and everything going on, but it also would change massively when it was exposed to fear and horror and anger and all of the negative emotions. And that's what's happening in your body. So it starts here, because again, the antithesis of everything, as Emerson said, is a thought, okay? So it starts here, it floods on down through your body, which leads to an action. But if you don't deal with something like anxiety, and it's chronic anxiety, it will then begin to attack the weakest parts of your body. If you're someone like me, for example, it attacks your stomach. In most people's case, it will attack their back, their knees, their joints. And if it sits there long enough, it can actually burn a hole through you. Now, why on earth should you be worried about that? Well, because again, if something like anxiety has been normalized, then you probably want to be concerned about somebody saying, well, this could burn a hole through you and it's going to cause major effects. Now, you've heard the phrase before, you can worry yourself to death, right? You literally can. I am living testimony of this. When we started doing the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast probably about 4 years ago, and I was interviewing people, and I remember, interviewing sometimes 10 people in a week. It was busy, 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 busy. And I would get myself more and more stressed. And I'd be painting and I'd be doing this, and I'd be doing that. And I'd be flying around all over the place. And what I ended up doing was tearing my midsection just from under my breastbone right down to my navel and around my back. It was excruciatingly painful, to the point I think I only slept 14 hours in about 6 months. That is no word of a lie. My wife will attest to that. So you can literally worry yourself to death. The other effects that it has on your body is the aging process. If you can't get anxiety under control and recognize, hey, I'm causing this because I'm responding to situations that have happened before, and people tell you around it's normal to feel like this. It is not normal. But people, some of the worst things you can do is listen to people. It really is. Because you don't want to make you feel bad. But ultimately, if something's normalized, you don't have to do anything about it. So if you don't have to do anything about it, you can literally sit there and be like, well, I've got anxiety and it's normal. It's not normal. How do I know it's not normal? Because you don't arrive on this planet with anxiety. You don't, if it was normal, every single person in this planet or on this planet would have anxiety. Okay, if it was normal, every single person on this planet would have anxiety. Every single person on this planet would have addiction issues or PTSD or bipolar. We have to stop normalizing things that are not normal. Back to the point that if you don't deal with things when they are small to deal with, remember the whole phrase, prevention is better than the cure? If you don't deal with things when it's a small thing, like a little bit of anxiety is not going to cause you much harm. But if it becomes this full-blown thing, then it's going to cause you major harm. In my book, The Battles We All Face, we talk about this. And I've got a whole chart that goes from top to bottom. And the bottom is like, you feel really good, you're really powerful, you're really positive. A little bit up further is well, you feel maybe less positive, sort of a little bit anxious, a little bit frustrated, a little bit wound up. And it goes from little bits to you feel thoroughly peed off, you want to rip the place apart. But then it gets even worse. It's like you're so angry, you're seeing red, you're blind with anger, you're frustrated, everything on you hurts, everything on you is tired, every mood is negative. And that's naturally brown because I couldn't think of another thing that was there. But it's so important that you become aware of you. Because once you become aware of you, you become aware that you can actually change what it is that you're feeling, what it is that you're doing. You can't control the world around you. Okay, you really can't. You can't control the wars that are going on. You can't control the fighting that's going on. You can't control the arguments and other people, but you can control how you respond. People say to me in session, John, I don't think I can control how I respond. And I said, if I slapped you in the face, could you control how you respond? They said, no, I'd slap you back. I said, but could you, if you really wanted to, if you hadn't been conditioned, could you control how you felt? It's like if I said, I love you, you control how you respond to that. You either go, ugh, or you go, ooh, or you go, that's nice, or you go, oh, that's so sweet. Equally, if I said, I hate your guts, I never want to see you again, some of you might be like, yes. Others of you might be like, wow, that sucks. Others may be like, wow, he sucks. You control. So you've got three different responses there. And we do this with patients all the time and clients, especially in the practice, where I will say, right, if you don't believe that I can control how you feel, but more specifically, you control how you feel, then here's what happens, okay? So I start by doing 2 minutes of negative stuff. You're useless, you're worthless, you're pathetic, you're unloved, you're uncared about, nobody could bother about you, no one could care about you, no one could like you. And they get really down, they get really slumped over, and it's really miserable. But then I say, okay, now we're going to energize you, now we're going to make you feel emotional. I want you to know you're amazing, that you're passionate, you're a divine being having a temporary human experience, that you are worthy, that you are something incredible, that you are something loved, that you are someone loved, you are someone worthy, that God Almighty himself was so in love with you that he put you here on the planet, that you are not this worthless being that you've been told you are, that you are actually something that really, really matters, and you have the ability in you to change the world one mind at a time. See how I talk, see even how I'm delivering things that are different there. You can see the difference straight away. People become enthused, they become amazing. You know, you're loved, you're beautiful, you're passionate, you're energetic, you're strong. What does that mean? It means that at any moment you can control how you feel. And if you can control how you feel just by changing your mental state, by what you focus on, then it means you can actually control anxiety. When you have full-blown anxiety attacks, it comes because you have ignored the warning signals. And when you ignore the warning signals, you're going to get major pain. In this video that Jordan Peterson is talking about, he probably is doing a far better job of talking about anxiety, but more specifically social anxiety, than I am. Check this out and we'll be right back.
Look, let's say you're socially anxious. Okay, so what happens when you're socially anxious? You go to a party, your heart's beating. Why? The party is a monster. Why? Because it's judging you. And it's judging you, it's putting you low down the dominance hierarchy, because that's what a negative judgment is. And that interferes with your sexual success. And that means that you're being harshly evaluated by nature itself. Right? So you are confronting the dragon of chaos when you go into the social situation. And so what do? You're like this, right? You hunch over, and that's low dominance. I'm no threat. It's like, well, that's not going to get you very far. You know, but that's a logical thing to do in the face of a tyrant. So I'm no threat. You know, you look at the king and you're dead. I'm no threat. I'm hunched over. And then what's happening internally? What are people thinking about me? What are people thinking about me? Am I looking stupid? Am I looking foolish? Geez, I'm awkward. I hate being here. Man, I'm sweating too much. It's all internalized, right? It's all self-focused. The eye isn't working. What do you tell people? Don't stop thinking about yourself, because you can't. It's like, don't think of a white elephant. White elephant, white elephant, white elephant. You can't tell someone to stop thinking about something because they get caught in a loop. What you do with socially anxious people is you say, look at other people. Look at them, right? Why? Because if you look at them, you can tell what they're thinking. And then unless you're terribly socialized, and some people are. Some people have no social skills. And so the reason they can't go to a party is because they don't even know how to introduce themselves. Like no one ever taught them how to behave. And so they're really good candidates for behavior therapy, because you walk them through the process of how you actually manifest the procedures that are associated with social acceptability. But most people aren't like that. They have the ability. So if they're really introverted and high in neuroticism, they can usually talk quite well to someone one-on-one. Why? Because they look at them. Well, if I look at you, it's another thing to do if you're ever speaking to a group of people. Never speak to the group of people. That doesn't exist. You talk to individuals, and then they reflect for you the entire group, because they're all entrained. So you look at one person, they broadcast to you what everyone's thinking, and you know how to talk to one person. So it's easy. So as soon as you focus on the person, not you, you push your attention outward, use your eye, you push your attention outward, and you start watching. Well, then all your automatic mechanisms kick in, and you stop being awkward. Because if we're talking, and I'm looking here, I don't know what you're going to do next, and I'm going to put disjunctions into the, they're like bad chords in the melody of our conversation. And the reason is I'm not paying attention. So that's why the eye is the thing at the top of the pyramid. It's like the thing that enables you to win the set of all possible dominance hierarchies is the eye. Pay attention. Pay attention. That's the critical issue. That's why the Egyptians worshipped Horus. That's why Horus was the thing that rescued Osiris from the depths. It's the capacity to pay attention. What do you pay attention to most? What your right hemisphere signals as anomalous. It attracts your attention. It's like, this isn't going quite right. I'm not looking at that. Wrong. That's what you look at. That's what you look at. What's not going right. Because that's the terrible monster that might eat you, but it's also the place you get all the information. So that's why it's useful to have discussions with your enemies, because they will tell you things you do not know. And that's such a great thing, because if you don't know them, well, you're not very smart, are you? You know, there may be a time when you go somewhere that's the thing you need to know. And maybe your enemy will tell you why you're such a fool, you know, and a bunch of other things that aren't true too. But even one thing that's accurate, it's like, yeah, thanks very much, man, maybe I'll do some work on that, and I won't have to carry that forward. So, and then that's part of the reason, again, why the terrible predator, it's always the terrible predator that has the gold. It's like, it's the person who delivers the message you do not want to hear. So it's rough, but it doesn't matter. Life is rough.
If you are struggling with your mental health right now, get in touch with us at thejohnmorris.co.uk. We're now accepting brand new clients that are struggling with anxiety, depression, and many, many more mental health issues. Our aim is to help you get from where you are to where you want to be, step by step. We start by listening, and then we start by feeding back. And then we start you on your path with personalized recommendations. So if this sounds like something that you'd be interested in, do get in touch with us at thejohnmorris.co.uk, and we'll be right here to help. Welcome back, folks. We are in our final session or final section on today's show. It's been a little bit quieter today. It must be a full moon or something, but people often watch this on the catch-up as well. But no matter, because it has actually given me an opportunity to work with our new cameras and other bits and pieces, and hopefully iron out any kinks that are there. Before we move on to the spirit section or the soul section, I think Jordan Peterson, what he was saying was really, really key in what he was saying. And a lot of the time what you find when somebody has anxiety, I firmly believe that is entrenched in a lack of confidence. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when people feel that they can go, they can take on the world, they can do absolutely everything, that there isn't a question that you can't ask them about a specific topic, they literally have zero anxiety. They're almost begging you, you know, come on, ask me, whatever it is, ask me. But if they feel like they are unworthy, that they feel unloved, that they feel unkind, that they feel unprepared or ill-prepared, they suddenly get to that position in life where they can't cope. And when you can't cope, and you know you can't cope, and you know that you are not feeling confident, then going into an environment where you're expected to be on, shall we say, can be crippling. And I've been there. And the whole thing about fake it till you make it is never, ever a phrase that I have loved or enjoyed at all. I find it's the one of the worst pieces of information that you can ever give someone, because you never want to start anything with the phrase fake. But what you want to do, if you're feeling like you don't know enough, become the most interesting person on the planet. Become the most interesting person on the room. How do you do that? You find stuff that you can talk about. I can talk about a lot of different things. I've managed to secure major business deals by being able to talk about a lot of different things because I study psychology, I study philosophy, art, history, business, theology, finance, history of medicine. I study the most random things at times. I study wrestling, I study boxing, I study sport, I study films, I study tech. And it has opened up the opportunity for me to work with some pretty big names, which actually later on in the year, hopefully we're going to be able to reveal a little bit more. And I won't just be doing it on here, which is super exciting. But more about that in another time. But ultimately, just to put a little bow on in the body section, if you don't deal with anxiety, after it started in your mind, it fragments in your mind, it's working down your body, you are really going to suffer. You're really going to shorten a lot of your life, but ultimately you're going to shorten a lot of joy in your life. And take it from someone who has been there and has overcome anxiety. And that is the most important thing that I want you to know right now. A lot of professionals will tell you, well, we can, how do we phrase this? We can't cure you, but we can sort of make it sort of bearable, okay? And we'll put you on medication. We'll put you on a program of pills. We'll get you into anxiety therapy where you're surrounded by 25 other anxiety strugglers and difficulty, and we'll reinforce the fact that you're afraid and terrified and everything, rather than actually looking for a solution. And it's the solution that you really want. But the problem again is when you are told by the populace, anxiety is normal, that everybody has it, and ultimately there is no cure. You accept that by popular consensus. It is all. I jotted down something, a note that I thought I needed to have, and I don't know where I've put it. Right, so it's the power of suggestion. Just before we move on, because I'm committed that I'm actually going to stay in time today. The power of suggestion came about and was heavily studied back in the 1940s, 1950s. But more so in the history of medicine by the University of Yale in the 1970s, 1980s, when they started talking about epidemics and pandemics. And what they found was, if somebody had a cold, that everybody, as soon as it hit the media, everybody had a cold. If somebody had swine flu, oh my goodness, everybody had swine flu. Somebody had COVID and they told you it's the most contagious thing on the planet. Well, it can't be the most contagious thing on the planet because COVID has actually been around 4,000 years before Christ. Yes, I did do the research. In many different strands, in many different strains. Furthering that, have you noticed, anxiety, there's a pandemic and an epidemic of anxiety. And I'm saying both of them because I can never remember which is which. It's in my notes somewhere. But have you noticed then how everybody has anxiety? It's really interesting. The power of suggestion is so powerful. This is why we always tell you, you must watch what you say, watch what you think, who you listen to, how you behave, but ultimately, most importantly, you must watch the words that you speak over yourself. Because as we covered in last week's episode, when you say the phrase, I am, and follow it up by a negative, you are speaking those things of the most divine part of yourself. That's why I only ever say, I am prosperous, I am healthy, I am well, I am strong. I can be funny, okay? I am funny, either looking or verbatim. That's the wrong word. Verbally is what I meant. See, it's live, and when we're live, folks, anything can happen. When you speak the words, I'm a genius. Okay, and people say, well, that's really conceited. What's the alternative? That you're not a genius? That you're dumb? That you don't have the abilities? And you watch how people speak over themselves all the time. What Wayne Dyer, okay, we are moving on. Wayne Dyer was perhaps one of the greatest teachers of our time. Passed away in 2012 or 2015, I believe. But the reason that Wayne Dyer was such a phenomenal teacher was not just because of what he taught, not just because of how he taught, but he was a phenomenal teacher because he not only explore things from a psychological point of view, as a doctor in psychology, but also from a spiritual point of view. And like myself, he delved deep into what it means to be a divine spiritual being having a temporary human experience, and ultimately how to live your very best life by observing things in the spirit. Check this out.
You need to hear this if you're feeling anxious. Wayne Dyer's wisdom is here to help. Anxiety can feel like a heavy weight on your spirit. But as Wayne Dyer reminds us, you cannot always control what goes on outside, but you can always control what goes on inside. When anxiety creeps in, it's a sign to look inward. Acknowledge your feelings, but don't let them define you. Dyer teaches us that our thoughts shape our reality. So focus on what uplifts you. Practice gratitude. Find joy in the little things. Meditate and breathe deeply. Remember, you have the power to shift your focus from fear to love. Wayne Dyer believed that our spirit thrives when we align with our higher self. By nurturing inner peace, we combat anxiety's grip on our soul. Embrace his wisdom and let your spirit soar. Feeling lighter already? Dive deeper into Wayne Dyer's teachings and discover the peace within you.
So it's said in A Course in Miracles that if you knew who walked with you at all times, you would never ever again feel fear. People believe that they just showed up here on planet Earth with literally nothing, else. It was your physical self. You were born, that's it. But scientifically, that has been proven to be a lie, because whatever makes up you when you pass away is not this physical form, because the body was weighed and scanned before it died. And then after it died, the body was also weighed and scanned, and it weighed exactly the same. But yet you weren't in there anymore. So it means that whatever makes up you, whatever chemical makeup you are, is more than just flesh and blood. And it's very, very important that you recognize and realize that. Back in the origins of time, shall we say, there was many great philosophers. And one of the basic things that they studied in early philosophy was who is really in control. Is it the spirit or is it the body? And there's this great painting of which I soon will have a print of. And I'm very delighted about that, because I like having artwork all around my office, as you might imagine, being an artist. But the painting was something like this. It was a horse rider. It was on a beautiful white horse. But beneath him, he had two other horses. And one was called spirit and one was called ego. And there's a lot of people that will say that the ego has to be the driving force, because without the ego, you won't do anything. But then on the flip side, if it's just ego, all you have is just arrogance and narcissism and, hey, look at me kind of thing. So the spirit maybe is the thing that needs to lead us, but the spirit sits there, all these different noises that different faiths and religions like to make. But what the spirit likes to do is to be at peace. And it's to teach peace and to focus on peace and to be peaceful and to be aware and to be channeled and connected. And you can even tell my body there. And I firmly believe you need to have both. You can't have one without the other. Because if you're someone that has ideas and you want to drive forward with them, well, you need the ego to be able to deliver that. But you need the spirit to keep you in check. Because otherwise your ego is just going to run fly. I said to my wife earlier on today that if a person with ideas pushing forward and telling all about how great the product is without a business is called arrogance. It's called, narcissism and obnoxity and hey, look at me syndrome. But if you've got a business, it's called marketing. And she found that, hilariously funny, as I tend to do. I'm kind of sad that way. But what you tend to find is when people start talking about anxiety, and I've got clients that come in all the time and they always want to talk about the self, and the self is the physical self. And I say, well, do you know that the chances of you being here is in the trillions, in the trillions and trillions and trillions. And that you have the power within your body to heal yourself. Now, this is a whole nother topic we will cover at some other period in time, because I think it's very important to cover this. That the body has the power to actually heal itself. And they say, oh, wow, really? Because oftentimes they never have delved any deeper than the physical self. They just see the outside and they say, well, you know, I have anxiety. So therefore, that just must be who I am. But the problem is, when you start looking from a spiritual point of view, the spirit doesn't have anxiety. That higher part of you doesn't have anxiety. And that's a really cool thing to observe. Because that means that if you are focused on, and this is really where it comes back to the ego having anxiety, not the spirit. The ego is the one that has anxiety. Why would an ego have anxiety? Simple. Because if your ego is sitting there saying, not good enough, not strong enough, not muscular enough, not talented enough, not successful enough, not financially rich enough, the spirit never says that. The spirit never says that. The spirit always sees you in the eternal now as an amazing, phenomenal being. Always, always. And when you connect with your divine self, your spiritual self, you connect with God, connect with the Holy Spirit, you connect with Jesus, you connect with Kankashua, however you want to phrase it, which for those of you that don't know, Kankashua is the Native American term for God or great-grandfather. But when you can dive deep into your spirit, you no longer feel like you need to compare yourself to other people, because what often happens, and I firmly believe this is where anxiety really comes from, it's comparing yourself to what you wish you had and who you wish you were, forgetting the fact that you are still growing, that you are still developing, and you are still learning. A wonderful lady who unfortunately isn't on with us today, I don't think she'd mind me sharing this. She asked me earlier on, how do I shed guilt? And I paused and I thought about it for an entire second, because guilt and worry are two of the most worthless emotions that we actually have, because you can't change anything, or if you can't change it, there's no point in worrying about it. And if you can, there's no point in worrying about it. If you can't change it, then there's no point worrying. And if you can change it, then go and change it. But don't sit there and worry. And it's the same with guilt. You can't change the past, but you can live in, you can learn from it and live in a future that is completely different to that experience before. But she asked me, and I said very specifically, how you shed guilt is this. I said, first of all, you've got to accept who you were in that moment when you made that decision, knowing fully that you did what you knew how to do given the circumstances of your life. It wasn't good, it wasn't bad, it just was. That's something else I think we need to talk about in different shows, because people often say, well, I had a really bad day. Well, you decided whether you have a bad day. I didn't. The world didn't. World could care less. But literally, you decide whether you have a good or a bad day. You know? What does it mean to have a bad day? It means that things didn't go the way that you wanted them to. What does it mean to have a good day? It means everything went the way that you wanted it to. That's what a good and a bad day means. And when you break that down, you know that. You can decide, you can have, all manner of crazy things going out there. There can be World War III going out there. And you can still have a great day. Little thing for you. Bring it closer to home, folks. So after last week's show, I'm sitting there with Katie, my wife, and we were having discussions about the state of the world. And as I said to you on the show, it's like, if I needed to leave right now because, Scotland had been invaded and, there was terror upon the land and it was just frightening and all this crazy stuff was going on. It's like, could I? Would I be safe? What would I do? How would I behave? All of those kind of things. And it really got to me because I was operating more in the flesh. Now, here's the thing. You can say, right, I got to operate all the time in the spirit, but that's not what you're here for. You're a divine eternal being having a temporary human experience, which means you need to have both. You can access that higher part of you, which is what I feel like I'm doing now, which is why I keep closing my eyes. Plus, it's actually quite nice sometimes just to close your eyes, not having all the burning lights just blasting around you. But I got really, really worked up and really quite upset and quite panicky. And health has been an issue and all the other stuff's going on. And we got to sit down and watch the final episode of Top Gear, what now is known as the Grand Tour. And to some of you, laugh at that. It's like, absolutely stupid. Why on earth would you watch that? And the answer to that's really simple, because I followed them all the way through their career and I really enjoy them. And I sat there and I thought about this Buddhist proverb. And it's a great Buddhist proverb. The setting is this. There's a lion above, and there is a 300-foot drop onto a big thorn bush or ragged spikes below. And you're hanging off the rock face. You can't go up, you can't go down. There's a snake maybe that's going to bite your arm. I'm sure you will have seen this sort of demonstration. So what do? You're looking around, and what you find is a strawberry. It's just hanging there right in front of you, and it's the sweetest strawberry you ever tasted. Now, why is that significant? Because you can't always change external circumstances and events, but you can look for the beauty that exists. And I thought to myself, I got hit by that. I got hit by that like a stack of dimes. I really did. And I sat and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? Perhaps Top Gear, and you know, in the insanity that's going on in the world, perhaps that is my moment of just clarity and peace and stillness and joy, and maybe that is my strawberry. Maybe that's my strawberry. Because we get so busy. We see the problems of the world. You know, we say, oh my gosh, how can I change this? How can I change this? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you cannot change the problems of the world. But all you can do, like what I'm doing now, I'm speaking maybe to 5 people live. And I'm very much aware in the United States, people are just getting up and they're going to work. Here in the UK, they're just finishing work. In Australia, they're in bed. It's the most crazy time to be doing a podcast. And yet, still I'm here. Maybe we'll need to change some times up. I don't know. But I do know people watch it afterwards. And it's a blessing to them. And that it's growing and it's developing. And yet, I still feel I'm meant to be here. That part of me that is channeling deep. And sometimes you will do things in life that you have no idea why you're doing them. But you do them anyway. You do them anyway, even if it makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. Because we feel like we have to be the ones that decides on the outcome. We feel that we have to be the ones that decide on how this works out, why this works out, the format that it works out, and we aren't. All we can do is simply do and simply be. And when you do that with a genuine heart, watch how it grows. Watch what happens. Watch how things behave. I want to round out with this. If you are struggling with anxiety today, first of all, apparently my microphone stand is that's a good one. We've never had that before, that my microphone stand just decided to fall over. Bear with me. But if you are struggling today, maybe that's the devil trying to throw me off. But if you are struggling today, what I would ask you to do is to get in touch with us at thejohnmorris.co.uk. We can talk. We don't have to meet in session, but certainly so as I can help you get some form of help. And if you do choose to go into session with me and you want help, you want the mental health mentoring practice to be available to you, then we're absolutely taking clients on right now, as we talked about earlier on. But I think it's the most important thing that you watching on YouTube and you, lovely ladies, Susan and Billy, that are watching, know that you're not alone in whatever it is that you're facing. Because anxiety can be, if it's not dealt with, it can be one of the most crippling things that a person can actually face. It can be absolutely terrifying. But here's some things that you can do if you are feeling anxious right now. First of all, you need to know, is this a logical fear or is it an illogical fear? Is it something that could actually happen, likely to happen, or is it something that's unlikely to happen? That's the first thing. The second thing is that you need to know and be very, very clear as to what you're anxious about. What is it that's causing anxiety? What's at the root of all of this? Third thing is, do not stick your head in the sand. Many people want to stick their head in the sand because it seems far easier in the moment and at the time, and you just don't want to deal with it. Let me clarify that. If you are in what I call the brown section or the red section, which is you're feeling really annoyed, you're feeling really frustrated, you're feeling unbelievably peed off, angry with the world, then this is not the best time to be trying to set new goals, and because you're just going to explode. That's what's coming next. And it's probably better that you have the eruption, okay? Because what happens after an eruption is you get that calm, you get that clarity, you get that peace. If you've got to that point already, you're heading for an eruption, and it's better that you have one. It's going to take some time off your life, but the moment of clarity and the moment of peace that you will have is incredible. It really is, okay? So I'm telling you to have the eruption. Go and scream into a pillow if you need to. But you have to, it's like a pressure cooker. You have to release. You have to release what's inside you. And the only way, if it's built up and built up and built up, you can do all the meditation you want. You can do all the medication you want. You can do all the spiritual practice. It's going to blow at some point, okay? Unless you turn the pressure cooker down. But the problem is you turn the pressure cooker down, as soon as that pressure cooker comes back up, you're going to erupt. Okay, now I've had clients before that I've handed them the cushion. I've walked out of the room. I said, I'll give you 5 minutes. Scream, shout, bawl, swear, do whatever you need to do. But you have to get this out of your system. You created it. You have to release it. And then what we start doing is when you blow and you're tired and you're like, you're then ready to listen because you go back into the green stage. And from there, you start putting plans in place where you never again need to go through anxiety. A full-blown anxiety attack. I have done it. I continue to do it to this day. And I continue because it starts by being aware. And when you're aware of yourself and your surroundings and everything else, you realize there is more to you than just flesh and blood. And the final thing that I would say to you today, whether you believe or you don't believe in God, religion, well, religion is man-made. God is not. You know, I heard a great video this morning that was all about the zero verse in Genesis. And basically it was before the earth was God. Before the earth was God. Before the earth was God. Before creation, before everything was God. And that really was an amazing thing. Before creation was God, after creation was God. God is God. And the best thing that you can do is to connect with that divine spiritual part of yourself and also that amazing spiritual part that is outside of you that can teach you, that can lead you. The final thing I'm going to say about this, because we've got 2 minutes. I found that when I turned off social media and I really just listened, I found everything that I needed to know. The right teachers came at the right time. The right business partners came at the right time. The right messages, the right phrases from my book, the right verses, the paragraphs, everything I needed showed up. Everything. And what I discovered was this, that a lot of people in the business world want you to be miserable. They really want you to be miserable and to make you believe that they are the savior, that they are the mentor, that they're looking after you, that they care for you. They don't care for you. What they actually care about is if you're going to buy their course or their product or not and line their pockets with money. If you turn off social media or certainly reduce it, you will probably find that 90% of your anxiety dissipates overnight. Overnight. Easily. Easily. Why? Because you've no longer got that comparison syndrome. Remember what we talked about earlier on? That's one of the greatest ways the devil will thwart you. The greatest way the devil will thwart you is making you want to have something which somebody else has that you don't. It's one of the easiest ways to do it. So when you drop comparison syndrome, you engage with your higher self. And I will tell you now, I know you may watch this and you're thinking, Gordon, but this guy's crazy. Probably. But I'm not a multimillionaire at this point. It's there. I'm working towards it. And I'm loving what I'm doing. But I'm happy. I'm rich and successful. Do you know that, what is it? That if you make $30,000 a year, you are considered the top 3%, I think it is. Given the fact that 90% of the world survives on less than $1 a day. Stop comparing yourself to others. Stop comparing yourself to others. Start living. Start enjoying what you do and connect with that higher part of yourself. And how you do that is very simple. You sit. You may want to close your eyes. You don't need to put your hands together, clasp a prayer, anything like that. You can just sit here like this in this chair. And a prayer that you can speak or a word, whatever you want to, whatever you say, is, God, I don't know whether you're real or you're not. The fact that you showed up here on this planet, by the way, is evidence of God. Just saying. I don't know whether you're real or if you're not. But I want to be happy. You choose to be. I want to get to know you if you exist. And I want you to reveal yourself to me. And then what I want you to do is look. I want you to watch. In your everyday situations, in your everyday life, I want you to look. I want you to watch. I want you to really be observant. This is what we call higher awareness. And when you start looking for things that are amazing and great and divine, you're going to find them everywhere. But sorry, not sorry. Your life will never be the same again. That's all we've got time for, folks. Unfortunately, I could do much more and I could talk much more about anxiety. Thank you for bearing with me today because I'm still getting used to the flow of using videos. Thank you to the wonderful ladies on Facebook that are both watching live and that are going to watch in the catch-up as well. For folks on YouTube, as always, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend because it could be the very thing that they need to hear in their hour of struggle. And I hope you've enjoyed this. We're going to go back, of course, and watch to see how all of this flowed and worked. But thank you so much for being a wonderful audience today. Until next time, take care, God bless, and we'll see you on next week's episode of the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast with John Morris.
Welcome to the Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. The show that not only dives deep into real-world issues, but also brings it closer to home, helping you master the internal world of your mind and the external world of your home and environment. This is a show you can't afford to miss. So, welcome one, welcome all to Mind, Body, and Soul with your host, Scottish artist, author, and mental health mentor, John Morris.